What do you think about the idea, though, of the company basically being treated like a person with rights? So if they chose they didn't want to be associated with an employee anymore. I mean, I guess there's that goes to the whole idea of what is it, at will employment,
Yeah.
where they may not even need a reason to fire you; they just can.
Yep.
I don't know if that's at will or whatever the opposite of that is. What do you think of companies wanting to do that? I mean, should they have the ability to do that, even if the reason isn't good?
I mean, yeah, I think that there's definitely a gray area where employees may be damaging to the company, but not in like a very obvious way. And so you don't need a very specific reason to fire them or whatever. But, and you can, companies could abuse that for sure and say, oh, we're firing this person for this unspecified reason, not because they said something we don't like on Facebook or whatever. But I think if we just put it in like black and white terms, I don't think it should be okay for a company to fire someone based off of what they said in public. If they're
Mm,
firing them for some other reason, like, oh, well, we don't want to associate them, or maybe they smell bad when they come into work or whatever, or they just have bad work habits, I think that's completely legitimate. But I do think there has to be a specified reason. I do think that a company can't just say, I want to fire you because I want to fire you. Like, causes problems at work, is annoying. Those kinds of things are legitimate reasons. Holds up the supply chain too slow. Those are legitimate reasons. But there can't be like, because they can do the same thing. Like if someone's African American and they don't want to employ an African American, they just, we're going to fire you for just some indiscriminate reason and have it just
mm.
be hidden racism or whatever. So I do think the company does have to provide some sufficient reason to fire someone, uh, to make it legitimate, not just fire you for whatever reason they just feel like.
Right. Um, the first instance I can think of where someone was fired for something, and I wondered, like, well, should that have happened? Is Don Imus, when he was talking about one of the college's female basketball teams. I think he called them nappy headed, and like that was just like, nope, you're fired, goodbye, gone. I can't think of anything before that where it almost seemed like a knee jerk reaction. That actually seems that instant seems more understandable now, maybe through the lens of 2021. But I don't know if that's because I'm just getting accustomed to cancel culture. Can you think of anything before the Don Imus one, or uh,
Well, there's the Jordan Peterson incident. There was the Peter Boghossian incident. There was oh, the guy who worked with Peter Boghossian, I forgot his name.
what
Yeah,
was
there's a
the
lot of professors who are anti-SJW, anti-woke, who have been fired or tried to get fired from many different jobs just because they voice opinions against feminist ideology. And I think that's important. Like,
mm,
if someone was actually discriminating against a different group in the classroom, absolutely, that warrants being fired. But if they're just voicing opinions against an ideology, that does not. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, except if it was like gas the Jews or something. Then it's maybe a little more okay, especially if they're on the job. But if they're just like even on the job, just saying I don't really like feminism or whatever, that shouldn't, you shouldn't be fired for that. That's ridiculous. It's just a political ideology saying I disagree with that political ideology, and the fact that the feminist community interprets that as harm or violence in some way is so
mm.
asinine. It's just it's completely unfair. It's like Christians saying, oh, you're not praying, you're sinning against God, now we must crucify you. It's essentially the exact same religious ideology or religious mentality of that. Oh, if you don't say the magic words in the magic correct way, oh, it's a sin now. It's so dumb.
Mm. I don't think I'm familiar with the Peter Boghossian one. What was it? Feminism that he was
Yeah.
speaking? Okay.
Yep, him and starts with the J. I'm pretty sure it starts with the J. The guy he works with. But yeah, they did. There was a they did a study where they did the most ridiculous, silly studies, like the sexual attractiveness of dogs in a dog park or something. Completely just made it up. Just made up the most dumbest studies imaginable, filled them with feminist language that said literally nothing, and published and sent them to like the top feminist journals and got them published in the top feminist journals to show just how much of a joke they are, just to make fun of the entire feminist ideology in feminist journals. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And everybody was very upset by this. And they used the legitimate criticism was that he was falsely publishing papers in academic journals, because kind of, yeah, that's true. And they use that to try to fire him. James Lindsay, thank you, HMS Hood. HMS Hood mentioned James Lindsay is the guy who was working with Peter Boghossian. There was somebody else, a woman as well, I believe. And so I think they tried to fire him, or they successfully fired him. He moved to a different college or something like that, because he falsely published papers as an experiment to show just how Helen Pluckrose was the woman's name. Thank you, Nick Jr. To show how ridiculous the feminist ideology was. So Peter Boghossian has spoken pretty vehemently against feminism. Peter Boghossian and these other people, James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, have criticized feminism a lot, and the institution does not like that. Not at all. They really don't like that. And you can find people on Twitter hating on these people because they critique feminism all the time. So yeah, there's a they're not looked well upon in the feminist community.
That's unfortunate. I think at its heart, aren't we all feminists? We should be treating women as equals. Why wouldn't they be?
Well, yeah, in the most general usage of the term, but in the modern usage of the term, it has a completely different meaning. Now it
has been co-opted.
Yeah, now it's obey or die, essentially.
Yeah, that whole cancel culture thing. What do you think about? Okay, so you've got the feminism thing that people can lose their minds over. What do you think about something like evolution? If there's people who are actually professors, I guess not in biology, but they hold to this idea that evolution isn't real, do you think they should be fired and lose their job?
No, absolutely not. I see no problem with that whatsoever. Even if they were biologists, geologists, as long as they taught the curriculum, the actual approved curriculum correctly, then what they say in their free time or their own opinions, I couldn't care less. I'm totally fine with them just having their own opinions and trying to publish papers in, like, if they want to try to publish in geology journals about young Earth creationism, that's totally fine. I'm all for peer review. So if they can, like, I know there's a big publishing center for parapsychology. Parapsychology is one of the most published pseudosciences in the world. There are actual scientific journals that publish papers on these because they just put a lot of effort into trying to make them very rigorous studies. I have no problem with that. I think that exploring all the different ideas is perfectly legitimate. And so if the young Earth creationists could make testable predictions and publish papers doing experiments that could actually indicate this, that's fine. Like, I'm happy to investigate these. I'm happy to have these tested. It would be a cool thing to do. And I know that it's like, this is a good way to make progress in an ideology, is that you have it criticized. Like, I know that in debates, the best way to learn how to debate is to have someone tell you you're wrong. This quote from the Fundamentals of Chess, 1883, the only way to get smarter is by playing a smarter opponent. And so if you have someone who disagrees with evolution, and then they like present really strong arguments against evolution that you have to address, and then learn more, and by addressing them, you learn more about evolution and become more knowledgeable about the topic. That's a good thing. That whole interaction, the relationship between having an idea and then having someone challenge it, and then having to go back and reevaluate or learn more about your position, that's great. That is intellectual progress at its finest. So I have absolutely no problem with people being professors and rejecting the scientific consensus on things, as long as they actually teach the curriculum and do their job correctly. I don't care what their personal opinion is. That's fine.
Yeah. It would kind of be an argument from authority anyway, if, like, let's say your creative writing professor was talking to you about evolution. Like, that's not really your area.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But I'm even if it was like an actual geology or actual biology professor, I'd still say that's fine. Like, you can still go with the consensus disagrees with you. Even if that's your opinion, that's great. I'd prefer that in a college setting, where if I was in a class and I had like a theist professor and I could debate with him all the time about God while he was teaching logic or whatever, that I would enjoy that. That would make it a better experience for me, because I like the more confrontational engagements. So I'm totally fine with that. Be happy with it.